other people are now in custody after being arrested in connection with this case. That includes the suspect's two brothers and girlfriend, all 7 of them accused of trying to help Arriaga in some fashion. Following those developments, Chief Richardson also spoke about losing one of his finest officers, one of just 12 in the entire department.
It's a tremendous blow. We're having our ups and downs. We have good days, we have bad days. Not everybody's having them at the same time. We've had incredible support from other law enforcement agencies stepping in when we need it to cover our streets because we're not able to handle those shifts. It's been a tough few days.
Now, Corporal Singh leaves behind a wife and 5-month-old son. The suspect, meanwhile, is expected back in court on Wednesday. John?
So sad. Jeff Paul. Jeff, thank you. Back to the White House lunch meeting now between President Trump and Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. The two also discussing the president's order to pull U.S. troops out of Syria, which Graham has said is the wrong move. But now the South Carolina senator says he feels a lot better about the decision after meeting with the commander-in-chief. Listen.
I think the president has come up with a plan with his generals that makes sense to me. The goal is to make sure ISIS doesn't come back. We left Iraq too soon. We had them on the ropes in Iraq, left too soon. I think the president's very committed to making sure that when we leave Syria, that ISIS is completely defeated and we're inside the 10-yard line.
Trey Yingst has more.
John, as U.S. troops prepare to leave Syria, the American withdrawal is already being felt across the region. Russian-backed Syrian forces entered the northeastern city of Manbij Friday at the invitation of YPG Kurdish fighters. While previously these two groups have fought bloody battles in Syria, the Kurds fear a massive Turkish military operation once U.S. troops leave the country. On Saturday, U.S. coalition fighter jets were still flying over Manbij, but the future of the city remains up in the air. The city is a critical area just 20 miles from the Turkish border, and Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has promised a major operation against the Kurds. Critics of President Trump say the U.S. troop withdrawal is a betrayal of Kurdish fighters who helped the United States defeat large parts of ISIS. Since 2016, local fighters backed by the United States have controlled Manbij after reclaiming it from ISIS. Residents of Manbij are now in a difficult position. They face either an invasion by the Turks or see the Syrian army take control of the city, both of which could lead to more violence in northern Syria. A successful takeover of Manbij by Syrian government forces would be yet another victory for President Bashar al-Assad, who is already seeing a normalization of his country in the past few months. Just last week, both the countries of the UAE and Bahrain announced that they would be moving embassies back to the Syrian capital of Damascus. John?
Trey Yingst. Thanks, Trey. A rescue helicopter crash kills 4 people in the United Arab Emirates. You can see the helicopter going into a tailspin here, diving and then going up in flames. It was in the middle of a rescue mission yesterday near the world's longest zip line. An investigation into the crash is underway. Preparations also underway for the big night as New York City and the world get ready to welcome 2019. Security is tight. But will the weather cooperate? A live report from Times Square next. Plus, our coverage of the partial government shutdown continues as both sides refuse to budge over the border wall.
Our negotiations are at an impasse at the moment. I wish it were not so. But we've got to move away from the blame game, blaming the president, blaming the Democrats, Pelosi and Schumer and others.
A woman is recovering from serious injuries after police say a man she met on the popular dating app Tinder stabbed her multiple times. Her suspected attacker then died while in police custody. Litsa Papa with Fox affiliate WFXT in Boston has that story.
Tapley had just left work here at this animal shelter in Saugus before she went on to meet her Tinder date in Cohasset the night she was stabbed. 24-year-old Megan Tapley is suffering from serious slashes and stab wounds after police say her Tinder date attacked her Thursday night.
What's up, guys? Eric Stelzer here.
Officers found Eric Stelzer stabbing Tapley at his house in Cohasset, so they tased him to stop the attack. Stelzer then died while in custody on the way to the hospital.
Sad freak incident, and our thoughts have been with the family today.
Tapley is the youngest of 4 siblings, and her oldest sister tells me she's one of the sweetest souls, extremely smart and caring, not only for other people, but also animals. Tapley has worked as a vet's assistant at this animal center in Saugus for 3 years. Her sister tells me, quote, "My sister has been through a horrific attack that would have killed her had the police not arrived. It's going to be a long recovery due to extensive wounds, but she's an amazing, strong young woman and will get through this. Her family and friends are here for her and will be by her side throughout this recovery." Tapley's family was not available for an on-camera interview tonight since they're still by her side in the hospital. A source also tells us Stelzer was likely suffering from a mental health issue, and the investigation continues into the exact cause of his death. In Saugus, I'm Lisa Pappas, Boston 25 News.
Well, the countdown to the countdown is on. The big night is almost here as people all over the world prepare to greet 2019. New York's Times Square is getting ready for the big ball drop. Jackie Heinrich is live in Times Square right now. Jackie.
Hey, John, there are 25,000 balloons all ready to drop on the crowd tomorrow night. Also, 3,000 pounds of confetti, and of course, the ball is ready to go. But there are a lot of preparations happening all around us that you can't see, stuff that's going to keep the crowd safe. We're going to show you the fun stuff first, though. The New Year's Eve tradition is running 112 years strong, so it's got to go off without a hitch. This morning, organizers tested the ball drop mechanism and the 32,000 lights that more than 1 billion people will be watching on TV tomorrow night. This thing is huge. The current New Year's Eve ball weighs nearly 12,000 pounds. It's 12 feet in diameter and encrusted with more than 2,500 Waterford crystals, and it got a makeover for the new year. This year's theme is the gift of harmony. 192 Waterford crystals were installed in a new pattern on Thursday. We have come a long way since 1907. The first New Year's Eve ball was made of iron and wood and was lit with about 100 light bulbs, 25 watts each. That's about what you'd use in a table lamp. And of course, half the preparation, though, is in the security. More than 1 million people will be packing into Times Square, so thousands of NYPD officers will be deployed around the city. Sniper teams are already stationed on rooftops, and for the first time, NYPD is using drones to back up its network of more than 1,200 security cameras. Right now, there are no credible threats against the event, but intelligence analysts are working around the clock.
What he said is... So you will see a lot of officers. You'll see a lot of officers with a lot of gear and long guns and the kinds of weaponry needed for securing such a huge event. There obviously will be measures you won't see as well.
Our city invites you. Of course, the city is also preparing for the massive cleanup effort that's going to follow. Last year, city workers cleared out more than 57 tons of debris from Times Square after the festivities ended. Part of the cleanup is all that confetti. The city drops 1.5 tons on the crowd. Now, this year, the honoree is the Committee to Protect Journalists after a particularly violent year with the killing of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi and also the shooting at the Capitol Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland. So there will be esteemed journalists from several organizations flipping the switch to signal the start of 2019, and among them will be our very own John Scott. So, John, we are ready for you here in Times Square. Billions will be watching, and it's all ready to go here.
Jackie, thank you. I'm honored to be asked to participate. Look forward to it. Jackie Heinrich. A pair of possible Democratic presidential candidates speaking out today. What Terry McAuliffe and Michael Bloomberg had to say about 2020. And the partial government shutdown looking more and more likely to last into the new year. What kind of a difference could a Democratic-controlled House make? The partial government shutdown appears set to drag on into the new year when control of the House goes from Republicans to the Democrats. Hello, I'm John Scott, and this is the Fox Report. It's the bottom of the hour, if you're just joining us. President Trump and congressional Democrats battling over border wall funding. The president says he wants $5 billion for it and says it's crucial to keep illegal immigrants out of the country. Some Democrats say the wall would hurt the U.S. more than it would help.
It hurts the local economy, it hurts private property owners, and it doesn't do what Customs and Border Patrol agents want, which is they want more manpower, they want more technology.
You have people that are here legally from Mexico, from Central America, saying, get the wall where we need it, secure the border, you've got to make this country safe. I don't know why they're not being listened to.
Joining us now for more on this, Judith Miller, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research. So we seem to be at loggerheads here, neither side willing to budge. Is one side winning this fight right now, Judy?
Well, I think if you look at the polls, John, the Democrats are clearly ahead in that this shutdown is enormously unpopular. According to a recent Reuters poll, only 25% of the people polled think that shutting down the government is a good idea. Certainly the 800,000 people, the federal workers affected by it, don't like it over Christmas and at this time. And more than that, Donald Trump is being widely blamed for the shutdown, this unpopular move. 47% of people said they thought that the president was responsible, and that's compared to 33% who blame the Democrats. And of course, it's obvious why people blame Donald Trump for the shutdown, and that's because he said more than 25 times that he wanted the shutdown, he favored the shutdown if he didn't have the votes for his wall. So he is taking the rap for something that's widely seen over the holidays as Scrooge-like and unfair. So at the moment he's on the defensive, but never underestimate Donald Trump's ability to change the subject or to reverse that point of view.
You know who else doesn't think much of the shutdown is the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Richard Shelby, Republican from Alabama. Here's what he had to say.
At the end of the day, all of this will end, we don't know when, in negotiations. It's not a question of who wins or loses. Nobody's going to win this kind of game. Nobody wins in a shutdown. We all lose, and we kind of look silly.
So there's going to have to end it's going to have to end in some kind of compromise. The question is, will the president, who's been so vocal about wanting $5 billion, he might take half of that, but would he go any lower? How does the president come out of this without something for his wall?
Well, I think they changed the definition of whether a wall is a wall. As Nancy Pelosi said when interviewed by USA Today, well, is it a wall or is it a beaded curtain? Kellyanne Conway today, a spokesman for the president, said, well, maybe we're talking about slats, maybe we're talking about enhanced technical surveillance and other measures to assure security for the people at the border and for the country. I think there's going to have to be some give because the Democrats going into a new Congress with 40-plus seats in the House, the majority in the House for the first time since Donald Trump's election, they are feeling their oats. They are not willing to compromise. I don't think on this one Nancy Pelosi really wants to compromise. And so I think that it's going to have to be the Republicans that cave a bit and give way on what constitutes that four-letter word, wall.
You mentioned Kellyanne Conway and Nancy Pelosi, and we have Conway talking about Nancy Pelosi here, urging her to come back from her Hawaiian vacation. Listen.
First, the Democrats have to come back. Nancy Pelosi needs to come back from Hawaii. Less hula, more moolah for the DHS, Customs and Border Patrol, funding our border security. They need to come to the table and do their job. A fully functioning democracy demands that both parties come together and that the Congress and the executive branch work together.
I've heard a number of Democrats now, Judy, refer to the wall, the president's desire for a wall, as a 5th century solution to a 21st century problem. But I don't hear concrete proposals from any of them as to what they would do instead, except for, some vague promises of more electronic monitoring and perhaps more Customs and Border Patrol personnel.
Well, you're right. Their position is that it's not up to them to propose an alternative. They're the ones who are saying the president's idea of a wall is inefficient and ineffective and medieval, to use that term, and that they want something more up-to-date and modern.
But the president did promise it time and time.
It's up to the Democrat.
The president did promise it time and time again during the campaign. I mean, this was one of his signature issues, and it got him elected.
Absolutely, but he also promised that the Mexicans were going to pay for it. And now he's saying, well, it's actually the American taxpayers who are going to pay for it. And that's the arguments the Democrats are having with him. They say they don't want to spend $5 billion or $3 billion on a wall. They offered $1.5 billion as part of a compromise that the president walked away from. So they're not in a mood to compromise, and they say it's up to him to come to grips with the fact that he can't make good on the promise that he's already backed away from in terms of who's going to pay for it.
And Nancy Pelosi has some thorny issues ahead because she cannot be seen as caving into this president when she wants to win re-election as Speaker of the House.
Absolutely, and she's already made the ultimate sacrifice, John. She's canceled the congressional dessert reception on Thursday for the incoming members. This is her idea of, compromising, because Nancy Pelosi, I think, is a good vote counter and thinks that she does have the votes now to become the Speaker of the House. She's going to have a hard time inside her own party maintaining discipline and holding down that leftist, young, rebellious faction that want to confront and challenge the president rather than get things done for the American people. So she's going to have a hard fight just maintaining discipline within her own party.
I know that you've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. The president points to the wall that the Israelis have built between, Israeli-held areas and some of the Palestinian areas as a huge success for them. Is it, and should it be copied, or could it be copied in a way that would be successful here?
Well, it's a huge success in terms of security. It's not been a huge success in terms of advancing a political agenda that would lead to ultimate compromise and a solution of the Arab-Israeli conflict. But yes, in terms of security, it has worked. The problem is our border is very different from theirs. It's far longer. Parts of that border are simply not amenable to a wall. And I think that I do agree with the people who say in a modern 21st century economy, you need technological surveillance, you need smarter security, you need more immigration judges to hear asylum cases, and you need immigration reform. That's what John Tester has been saying. Both sides need to compromise, get off their high horse or their high walls, and understand that we really have to do something about our broken immigration system. This may be the moment for that if people are willing to compromise on Capitol Hill and in the White House, but I'm not sure I see any signs of that at the moment.
Yeah,
no Christmas spirit there, John.
The art of the compromise, that's politics, right? Judy Miller, Happy New Year
it should be.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, John. Bye.
President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, with a stern message for special counsel Robert Mueller today, saying enough is enough, and it's time for Mueller to show his cards in the Russia investigation. Here's Giuliani this morning on Fox and Friends.
My ultimatum is put up or shut up, Bob. I mean, what do you have? There are those of us who believe you don't have anything on collusion. And by the way, if you did, it's not a crime. So what the heck are you doing? Do you have anything that shows the President of the United States was involved in a conspiracy to hack the DNC with Russia? Of course you don't. But if you do, put out a report or give it to the Justice Department, let them review it, make sure it's not classified or whatever. Put out a report.
So far, the Mueller probe has resulted in more than 100 criminal counts, although many have been lodged against Russian agents, and they will never go to court. A pair of Democrats speaking out on their prospects for a possible White House run. Asked today about a potential 2020 Democratic bid, former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe says he's, quote, obviously looking into it. Meantime, here's what former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg is saying.
Timeline is beginning of the year, end of January, into February maybe. Line is, I'm not sure yet. I care about a bunch of issues. I care for my kids. I care for this country that's been so good to me. And I want to see how I can help the best.
Bloomberg says if he runs, it would be as a Democrat. He switched his registration from Democrat to Republican in 2001 to launch his political career, then switched back to Democrat 2 months ago. President Trump has already put 2 justices on the Supreme Court, but some of his tweets have sparked questions about the partiality or impartiality of judges. Dan Springer takes a look at how the commander-in-chief can and cannot impact the courts.
When U.S. District Court Judge John Tigar blocked the Trump administration plan to bar asylum to any immigrant not entering at a designated border crossing, President Trump railed against who he called the Obama judge, which drew this response from Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. We do not have Obama judges or Trump judges, Bush judges or Clinton judges. What we have is an extraordinary group of dedicated judges doing their level best. Trump tweeted back, "Sorry, Chief Justice John Roberts, but we do have Obama judges, and they have a much different point of view than people who are charged with the safety of our country." Court watchers say essentially both men are right.
Presidents certainly hope that the judges they nominate share their views and hold those views long after the president's out of office. And I think the Chief Justice is correct that the judges are independent. They are not beholden to the president who nominates them.
President Trump also bashed the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals for not even hearing his appeal on the asylum ruling. It's been a frequent attack during a string of losses on immigration cases, from the travel ban to sanctuary cities.
You go to the Ninth Circuit and it's a disgrace, and I'm going to put in a major complaint.
Of the 41 sitting judges on the Ninth Circuit, 20 by Republicans.